Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. When you ask Chiefs fans who the greatest defensive player in the history of the franchise is, odds are it's going to come down to a handful of names. For many, they would say it's Derek Thomas, the 9-time Pro Bowler and Hall of Famer who finished his career with over 126.5 sacks, ranking first in franchise history in this category. Some might say it's Emmett Thomas, the 5-time Pro Bowler and Hall of Famer who finished his career with the franchise-leading 58 interceptions. And while you would get other answers ranging from Bobby Bell to Buck Buchanan, one of the most popular answers would definitely be this guy right here. Willie Lanier is not just one of the greatest defensive players in the history of the Chiefs, but is one of the greatest linebackers in the history of the National Football League. There's a reason that in 1986, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, forever enshrined in canon. He was well respected by his peers and just about everyone who watched football, making 8 straight Pro Bowls and All-Star games from 1968 to 1975. But what you might not know is that the last of these Pro Bowl appearances almost never happened. And what I mean by that is that Lanier was never supposed to be playing in 1975, as he announced his retirement from pro football 1 year before in 1974. And this is the story of the bizarre retirement and unretirement of Willie Lanier. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to just who Lanier is, because it will help us to understand why this retirement announcement was so shocking in the first place. In the 1967 NFL-AFL draft, the Chiefs wanted to tighten up their defense, especially the linebacker position. Even though all 3 linebackers on the team were AFL All-Stars the year before, they got exposed in the Super Bowl against the Green Bay Packers, and 2 of the starters were approaching the wrong side of 30. With that, they spent their first 3 picks at rounds 1 and 2 on the defensive side of the ball, with one of those picks being Morgan State linebacker Willie Lanier. And to say that this pick worked out would be an understatement. Lanier became the team's starting middle linebacker in 1967, even though people projected that he would start on the outside, if he even started at all that season. By 1968, he was one of the best linebackers in the American Football League, starting all 14 games for the Chiefs while being named an All-Star and a first-team All-Pro. He followed that up in 1969 with another All-Star appearance, while being one of the key anchors on a Kansas City defense that doesn't really get talked about a lot as one of the all-time greats. In 1969, the Chiefs allowed just 12.6 points per game, ranking first in the AFL. In 3 playoff games, they allowed 20 points, never allowing more than 7 in a game. And at Super Bowl IV, which the Chiefs won 23-7 to win their first Super Bowl in franchise history, Lanier had a critical interception early in the 4th quarter to practically seal the deal. He followed that up in 1970 with his 3rd straight Pro Bowl appearance, followed that up in 1971 with his 4th straight Pro Bowl appearance, as well as a first-team All-Pro nomination, followed that up in 1972 with his 5th straight Pro Bowl appearance, and followed that up in 1973 with his 6th straight Pro Bowl appearance, as well as another first-team All-Pro nomination for the 3rd and final time in his career. On top of that, Lanier was an Iron Man. From 1968 until the end of his career, he missed just 1 game. He was a stud in every sense of the word, serving as one of the hardest-hitting linebackers and best coverage linebackers in football. He earned the contact nickname. Lanier had a ton of pressure on him, especially since he was the first black middle linebacker in the history of professional football, and he delivered. Lanier was a trailblazer. Hank Stram gave him the opportunity, and Lanier took advantage of it and then some. But after the 1973 season, as one of the best linebackers and defenders in football, he was thinking about hanging it up. Even though Lanier was arguably the best linebacker in football by the end of 1973, he was thinking about his post-football career. After the 1974 season ended, he would be on the wrong side of 30. And Lanier was concerned about 2 things. Number 1, he was concerned about his play declining. During the 1973 preseason, the Chiefs were taking on the Vikings, and Lanier nearly passed out from heat exhaustion. That was a sign to him that maybe his time was coming to an end. Now, keep in mind that it was 120 degrees on the field, so just about everyone in full pads running at full speed would feel like they were going to pass out. And Lanier followed that preseason game up by making the Pro Bowl and being named a first-team All-Pro. So whether this concern was well-founded at all is up for you to decide. But the second thing that he was worried about was the possibility of re-injuring himself. That neck injury he had toward the end of the 1967 season against the Denver Broncos took a toll on him. He said that he was unconscious for 30 minutes, and when he got out of the emergency room, he saw his wife there and wondered if he'd ever be able to recover. Obviously, he did recover, but he said that he knew he had to deal with the possibility of that injury reoccurring, and that with each game that he played, and the older he got, those odds increased. Because of this, in June 1974, Lanier decided that this season would be his last. This would be his farewell tour. He would play 1 more season, and then hang it up and call it quits. As it turned out, Lanier had a job lined up after his pro football days. He had the opportunity to work for Philip Morris International, the famous tobacco company that's still around to this day. And as Lanier said, he felt that he was ready to do other things. He still enjoyed the game, but he had done his part. He had played in just about every game from the moment he entered pro football in 1967, which you didn't see too many guys do back then, as most rookies sat to start their careers off. He wanted to go out healthy and on top, which is definitely a respectable decision. So with that, the 1974 season for the Chiefs had a bit of a different feel to it. As for what happened in 1974, well, that season changed just about everything for everyone involved.
For number 63 of the Kansas City Chiefs, last Saturday was to be the last game of his 8th and final season as one of pro football's most outstanding linebackers, leaders, and gentlemen.
The good news was that this swan song season by Lanier was fantastic. Once again, Lanier showed why he was one of the top middle linebackers in football, making it to his 7th straight Pro Bowl appearance. He also recorded the first and only safety of his career on Monday Night Football in front of a national television audience against the Denver Broncos. Unfortunately, footage from that game seems to be lost media. If this was it for Lanier, he was going to go out on top, just like he wanted. The bad news was that for the Chiefs, they were absolutely terrible that season. They finished the season with a record of 5-9. Not only was it the 3rd straight year that the Chiefs missed out on the postseason, but it was the first time that they finished 3rd or worse in their division since 1965, which was so long ago that Lanier was still in college. And it was the first time since 1963 that the Chiefs had a losing record, which was the team's first season in Kansas City after moving from Dallas. The 5-9 record was also the worst winning percentage by any team in franchise history. In 1974, the Chiefs were bad in just about every single category. They finished 18th in total offense and 21st in total defense. On defense, they allowed the 2nd most yards of any team in football, the 3rd most passing touchdowns of any team in football, and the 2nd most passing yards of any team in football. On offense, they were held to 7 or less in 5 games. The Chiefs lost their final 7 home games, and after a 2-1 start, dropped 8 of their final 11 games, with the last one being a 35-15 demolition at the hands of the Minnesota Vikings. That game, which was an unbelievably sour note to end the season on, was so bad that Bob Berry, the backup quarterback to Frank Tarkenton, threw 2 touchdown passes and just 1 incomplete pass. Head coach Hank Stram called the season a big disappointment, but he wouldn't get a chance to right the ship, because in a somewhat surprising move, after the 1974 season, Stram, the only coach that the Chiefs ever had, was fired. When 1974 ended, Lanier was officially retired to become a general manager of the aforementioned tobacco company. Nothing Hank Stram said could convince him to come back. But now, the Chiefs were about to hire a new head coach, and his first order of business? Find a way and do whatever it takes to get Lanier playing middle linebacker for the Chiefs again. In 1975, the new head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs was a man by the name of Paul Wiggin. He spent the previous 7 seasons as the defensive line coach of the San Francisco 49ers, and helped coach Pro Bowlers like Cedric Harmon and Charlie Kruger. In his introductory press conference, Wiggin made it very clear that his first priority as the head coach of the Chiefs was to bring Lanier back, and Wiggin wanted to waste no time to do it. He met up with Lanier and tried to get him to change his mind, but wasn't having a whole lot of luck doing it. But then, 4 months later, Wiggin broke through, and Lanier unretired. Wiggin was persistent, and in the end, his persistence paid off. The Chiefs gave Lanier a 3-year contract worth somewhere in the ballpark of 6 figures a year, up from the $65,000 he was making in 1974. Now, you might say that this whole farewell tour was a giant bluff for the purposes of leveraging his pay, but that's not what happened, especially since at his job with the tobacco company, he was making significantly less than he was with the Chiefs. Whatever Wiggin said clearly worked, because Lanier later said that even though he had to work harder physically to keep up with the young guys, that he still enjoyed the game and had no regrets whatsoever. Paul Wiggin wasn't a good coach for the Chiefs by any means, but he deserves some serious praise for luring one of the best middle linebackers of all time out of retirement. So that raises one final question. How did Lanier play after the unretirement? Well, he had one of the best years of his career in 1975, making the 8th straight Pro Bowl of his career while starting every game and finishing with a career-high 5 interceptions. He actually led all linebackers in the AFC in this category, and the only linebacker who had more picks that year was Leroy Jordan of the Dallas Cowboys, who was still playing at a surprisingly high level at the age of 34. Lanier would play with the Chiefs until 1977, when after the season, he would announce his retirement for good, and go down as one of the all-time greats not just in Chiefs history, but in NFL history. Lanier finished his over decade-long career with the Chiefs as one of the most accomplished players in franchise history. From his Super Bowl win, to his countless All-Pros and Pro Bowl nominations, to his NFL Man of the Year award in 1972, Lanier fully deserves his bust in Canton, Ohio. And it's crazy to think that he almost hung it up at the prime of his career. If you want to know why Lanier played at a high level in the mid-1970s, Thank Paul Wiggin, because without his words and without his persistence, Lanier calls it quits way earlier than expected. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Monday and Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9 and subscribe to 60-second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.